Kash Patel humiliated by Senator Whitehouse, and the moment it happened, the entire room changed. 1 minute, a nominee sat there projecting confidence, and the next, he was trapped in a cross-examination so sharp, so precise, that even seasoned staffers froze. Because what Whitehouse exposed wasn't just a list of questionable statements or a bad social media post. It was a pattern of threats, pardons, dark web connections, credibility issues.
And there's a lesson in that. Every time you think Trump would never go that far, rethink that. We all seem to agree that violence against police is unacceptable, yet more than 600 people who physically attacked Capitol Police officers were just put back on the street, part of a 1,500-person personal Trump army, now out there with people who have proven themselves willing to do violence on Trump's call. In only 10 days, some are already back committing crimes. We've also tried as a committee together to address the dangers of illicit drug sales over the internet, and I assume we're all against murder for hire. But Trump also just pardoned a dark web operator sentenced to life in prison for trafficking illegal drugs online and accused of soliciting murders for hire. Those pardons, as Mr. Patel has said, are a mistake, but they are also a signal that we are entering a strange and dangerous time. That is the context for today's hearing. Warnings that the FBI could become Trump's enforcer, use the powers of law enforcement to stifle speech and dissent, punish political rivals of either party, and hand out free passes, get out of jail free cards to violent supporters are warnings we should heed. Here are some warnings of this nominee's Trump administration colleagues. Former Attorney General Bill Barr said, "This nominee has virtually no experience that would qualify him to serve at the highest level of the world's preeminent law enforcement agency," end quote, "and we would never be able to command the respect necessary to run the day-to-day operations of the Bureau." That's for the deputy position. Former CIA Director Gina Haspel was reported threatening to resign rather than have this nominee serve under her. John Bolton, Trump's former national security advisor, said, "I didn't think he was qualified. I was forced to hire him." Trump's deputy national security advisor, the nominee's former supervisor, said, "His ideas are ludicrous. He's absolutely unqualified for this job. He's untrustworthy. And it's an absolute disgrace to even consider an individual of this nature." That's from Republican appointees who worked with him. And here's what this nominee himself has said about using his office to prosecute journalists. "We will go out and find the conspirators, not just in government, but in the media. We're gonna come after you, whether it's criminally or civilly." Is that a correct quotation, Mr. Patel?
Senator, that's a partial quotation.
But it's correct.
In part.
Regarding his publication of his enemies list, Mr. Patel proclaimed, "The manhunt starts tomorrow," and reposted a video depicting him taking a chainsaw to his political enemies. Is that you, Kash Patel, reposting that at the top of that page?
Senator, I had nothing to do with the creation of that meme.
Is that you reposting it, was my question.
And that's me at the top.
You said FBI agents were responsible for the violence on January 6th, and I quote you here, "beyond a reasonable doubt." Is that what you said?
That's completely incorrect, and I appreciate the opportunity to address that.
I'll give you an opportunity in writing, but this is my time now.
Have at it.
An Inspector Attorney General investigation found that that was false. And you said we should impeach judges who rule against Donald Trump, who are, in your words, political terrorists. When this nominee tries to explain all this away, keep one thing in mind. He's testified under oath before a Colorado judge who presided over a Trump case in which he was a witness, and the judge found, and I'm quoting here, he was not a credible witness. His testimony is not only illogical, but completely devoid of any evidence in the record. That's from a judge. This is a dangerous time, and I ask all my colleagues to consider whether these plain comments by this person and by his own Trump administration colleagues should be given a blind eye, just overlooked, or whether, like the warnings of pardoning violent January 6 offenders, they're warnings to be heeded. There is an unfathomable difference between a seeming facade being constructed around this nominee here today and what he has actually done and said in real life when left to his own devices. Conduct shows character. And if you look at history, you see the danger of security chiefs in authority
and the frightening possibility of a political loyalist stepping into one of the most powerful law enforcement seats in the country. And the first 30 seconds of this exchange sent shockwaves far beyond the hearing room. Imagine this. A nominee for a critical national security position forced to explain why he reposted a graphic video of himself taking a chainsaw to his so-called enemies. Not metaphorically, literally depicted. And when Whitehouse asked, "Is that you at the top of that post?" there was nowhere to hide. No staff, no spin, no friendly interviewer to rescue him. Just a direct question about a direct act. And the nominee had no choice but to say it. That's me at the top. That moment was the crack in the armor. The place where Whitehouse began tearing apart years of bluster, rhetoric, and self-constructed myth. Because once you admit to amplifying a call for a man in T against perceived political opponents, everything that comes next gets darker, more intense, more dangerous. And Whitehouse understood that perfectly. He brought the room back to a day none of them will ever forget. A day when lawmakers fled down hallways, doors barricaded, security scrambling as violence erupted inside the Capitol. A day when officers with long guns escorted elected officials through smoke-filled corridors while rears, not protesters, rears, forced their way into the heart of American government. Whitehouse described it in detail. Colleagues running, shouting, terrified. SWAT teams clearing the hallways. A constitutional duty resumed only after tactical units secured the chamber. But here's the part that hit hardest. None of the lawmakers, not Democrats, not Republicans, stood there that night calling for pardons. Not one. Even members of the same party as the outgoing administration said such pardons would be absurd. One called the idea beyond belief. Another said you'd have to focus only on people who didn't commit violence. Yet the administration pardoned them anyway. More than 600 individuals who physically clashed with law enforcement were handed a clean slate and put right back on the streets. Whitehouse described them as a personal army, now free, now emboldened, now part of a force that had already proven its willingness to act on political cues. And some, shockingly, were already back to committing offenses just days later. But the pardons didn't stop with rears. Whitehouse reminded the room that even a dark web operator, someone sentenced to life over massive illicit drug trafficking and accused of arranging violent, for hire schemes, received clemency too. That individual wasn't a low-level offender. This wasn't a minor case. This was someone running illegal operations across the internet, someone who had reportedly tried to pay for harm to be carried out against others. And yet, there it was. Another pardon. That decision alone was a red flag. But when you put it next to everything else, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. A nominee reposting violent imagery, supporting rhetoric that blurs the line between law enforcement and revenge, echoing conspiracy-style claims about agents and investigations. And paired with those pardons, it sends a chilling message about the future of institutional independence. Whitehouse didn't just rely on his own words. He stacked the record with voices from the nominee's own circle, high-ranking officials who had served in the same administration. Former Attorney General Bill Barr said the nominee had virtually no experience to lead the agency. The former CIA director reportedly threatened to resign if forced to work with him. A former national security advisor called the nominee's ideas ludicrous, unqualified, untrustworthy, and even a disgrace to consider for leadership. These weren't political opponents talking. These were people who knew him personally, worked with him directly, and still felt compelled to warn the country. Then Whitehouse pivoted to something even more disturbing: the nominee's own public statements. Not rumors, not speculation. His own quotes, including a declaration that his office would go after conspirators, not just in government but in the media, criminally or civilly. And when Whitehouse asked him directly whether that quote was accurate, the nominee couldn't deny it. He tried to minimize it, dodge around it, but in the end he admitted it was accurate in part. That confirmation, even partial, was damning enough. It only got worse. Whitehouse then exposed past statements where the nominee had blamed federal agents for the violence on January 6, beyond a reasonable doubt. Not only was that inaccurate, an inspector general review debunked it, but the nominee's attempt to deny or redefine his own quote was so shaky that Whitehouse simply cut him off and moved on, saving the rebuttal for the written record. It wasn't worth wasting live hearing time on something investigators had already disproven. Then came the moment that should haunt anyone who cares about rule of law. A judge, not a pundit, not a political rival but a judge, had once ruled that the nominee's sworn testimony was not credible, illogical, and devoid of evidence. Think about that. A potential leader of a powerful investigative agency had already been deemed unreliable under oath in a court of law. Whitehouse made it clear. This wasn't about dislike. This wasn't about ideology. This was about character, temperament, credibility, and fitness for a position that requires the ability to resist political pressure, not enforce it. And then came the warning. A warning drawn from history, across continents and decades. When security agencies become instruments of political loyalty, when leaders blur the line between justice and vengeance, when threats replace professionalism and intimidation replaces independence, the results are always the same: weakened institutions, silenced critics, eroded public trust, and a government that serves power instead of people. Whitehouse called out the traits that authoritarian systems often rely on: vengefulness, grandiosity, attacks on dissent, blind loyalty to a single person rather than the Constitution, and a willingness to place political goals above legal duty. His message wasn't melodramatic, it was grounded in real-world examples and real-world consequences. He warned about the chilling effect this type of leadership has on journalists. When officials signal they might target reporters, sources freeze. Whistleblowers stay quiet. Oversight grinds to a halt. Corruption thrives when the people capable of exposing it fear retaliation. He warned about the damage to career agents, whose morale collapses when leaders use badges as political weapons. When agents fear assignments based on politics rather than evidence, professionalism withers. Expertise drains away, and the public stops believing in the neutrality of investigations. He warned about the consequences for everyday citizens. Investigations can be launched, expanded, or weaponized based on grievances rather than facts. Protections that took decades to build can disappear in months, and once the door to political policing opens, it rarely closes again. Whitehouse explained what needs to be done. Citizens must stay engaged. Senators must evaluate nominees based on record, not loyalty. Investigators must demand documents, emails, and internal memos to expose politicization. Oversight committees must protect whistleblowers and keep shining light on abuses. And voters must support leaders who treat institutions like public trusts, not weapons. He ended with a stark comparison. The person sitting at that witness table, the nominee trying to smooth over years of behavior, was not the same person revealed by his record. There was a facade in the hearing room but a very different reality in the history, and ignoring that difference would be dangerous. The message was unmistakable. Institutions survive on trust, and trust dissolves the moment leaders start serving politics instead of principle. An FBI director must be someone who can look at evidence without fear, pressure, or bias. Someone who values the Constitution more than any individual. Someone who understands that independence isn't optional, it's the entire job. And Whitehouse's final warning, delivered without theatrics, was devastating. When someone shows you who they are through their conduct, you'd better believe them if moments like this matter to you. If you believe institutions should protect the people instead of powerful individuals, if you want breakdowns that cut through the noise and expose what's really happening, make sure to hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share this video with someone who needs to see it. Your engagement helps keep independent storytelling alive, and it ensures conversations like this don't disappear into the shadows.